Hello, this is Leo from Quotes and Posters, and today I'm going to talk about this poster here. Your ego is not your amigo. So, um, you see, we all have, to a sense, we all have like some egotistical levels, right? And a lot of people, like some people, you can clearly see the difference of behavior in some people. How each different person behaves to a similar situation, and then you can actually measure their level of their ego on that. So some people, they get really offended by others, but by what other people say, and other people, they never get offended. They can have people talking bad behind their back, they never get offended. Some people just freak out, they just like, oh, this person is talking of me, and then they get offended, they get angry, or they get disappointed, and they get all these feelings. Some people get angry, some people shout. This is like, all these things, they are products of your ego. And what would be like a person with no ego at all, you might wonder. I think that a person without ego would be the person that doesn't have any positive thinking, or doesn't have any happy thoughts, and also at the same time doesn't have any negative thoughts. So I think a person that doesn't have an ego, in my perception of what I believe the ego is a neutral, is a balanced person, right? So what does it mean? Is a person, because our ego is actually fabricating our emotions, So for example, we get very happy when we win something, and we get very sad when we lose something, right? And a person without an ego, it would be not even neither happy neither sad, would just like be there, present in the moment, right? I think that would be, in my opinion, someone with a zero ego, right? But obviously I never met anyone in my life with a zero ego. Everybody that I met in my life, they have their difficulties, they have their traumas about things that happened to them in the past. They have their insecurities. They might be very good, they might be very talented people at something, but they might lack, they might have a lot of problems internally with other things, right? And they also might have problems that they want to hide that they have problems, which is like the people who have narcissistic personality disorder, for example. This kind of people, they have a lot of problems internally inside, but they try and they do everything they can to hide it, because they need to be perceived through the world as someone with integrity, someone with high qualities. They cannot be perceived in the world as someone weak, you know, this kind of things. Those are the narcissistic people. So actually this is a big problem, you know, like narcissism in society today is a very big problem. Like we deal with narcissists all the time, and some of them are like survive through a high level of degree, and others are not. And so, for example, me, my ego is really bad. I used to have much more. You know, I think it's something that it gets. You get older and older, and you get like. At least to me, in my case, that's what I think. I don't know, and obviously I cannot judge by myself. Somebody else or a group of people have to tell me. But my ego, as the years pass, my ego gets less and less, and that is happening because I am putting a lot of effort on my behalf to actually think about my thoughts, you know, think about my negative thoughts, think about all the things that happen to me and the way I react, and reflect upon those things, and I think with time, with experience, if you are willing to recognize that you're not perfect, and if you actually acknowledge that your life is not in the way that you think it should be, if you can have a self reflection that if you have a self-reflection that you could have had a much better life, and if you're not happy with your life, and most of all, if you're not happy with yourself, if you think that you have a lot of problems, and then if you think that life gives you a lot of problems on the way, that's when you actually start to think about life and start to reflect about society and people and everything else, and you start to think about how your ego is actually affecting you and what can you do about it. Right, so in my case, I get my ego dissolved more and more when I stop to think about life in a daily manner. But obviously it just doesn't work that much, because obviously the ego always tries to come back. It always feels like your ego is kind of an enemy in a way, because it's always coming. It's like this force inside of you always trying to poison your mind from the clear thinking that you and the clear path that you are into, right? And many people have different theories about that, but I believe in that there's a biological meaning that your ego is doing these things to try to preserve you and try to preserve your life, because that's what people say, that when you experience ego death, your ego is trying to fight. So you have like panic attacks and all this like crazy feelings when you're facing death, because is your ego there working to preserve your life. So you have to understand that your ego is actually not a bad thing. Your ego, you have to understand, your ego is like your instinct. It's like trying to preserve your life. Your ego wants you to survive, and because it wants you to survive, it brings you these feelings of anger and fear and bring you all these things to actually try to preserve you from the enemies, from the surroundings, right? So that's actually a good thing, but it's a bad thing when it becomes something unconscious, when it becomes something that is really not giving you the best results, and is really not allowing you to make the right decisions in your life and to make the right choices that you could have been making, right? Because you can't make great choices in life when you are operating in fear, right? You can't make great choices. You actually need to be able to combine the rational with the emotional, and you need to be able to actually have a balance between them, between the rational and the emotional. That's the tricky part, you know. I think the real tricky part is trying to have this both things working together, because that's where you want to be. You want to have a balance, because ego is gonna be there. The ego is always gonna be there, but you have to balance that, which is the emotional. So for example, let's say that the ego is the emotional, and your mind and your thinking is the rational. So you got ego on your side and you got mind on the other side. you have to find ways of working together, right? So that's how you actually end up becoming a friend of your ego, not letting your ego ruin your life. Because I've seen many people who just let their egos dictate their lives, and they make wrong choices in life. They make choices in life that are egotistical. And what does it mean? It means that they choose things for them that are not gonna give them real good benefits. It's just gonna give them validation for their ego. So for example, and then I can give and this is, you see this happening in life everywhere, right? So for example, imagine like a girl who imagine a girl that buys expensive dress that she actually doesn't need, and she doesn't have any money left, so she spends all her savings in an expensive dress that she's gonna use one time, and she's gonna be posting photos of that on social media with this dress, just for nothing, just to feel good about herself, for her ego, because her ego needs, her ego is so, her level of conscience is so low that she needs to feel great. Her ego wants her to feel great, and the only way she can feel great is by posting on social media, so she can get the validation of the people, right? Yeah, so think about those things. This is just one example, but think how that example applied to yourself, to your life, right? Think about how that applies to your life. And see that your ego is not really doing anything great for you, because if you didn't have the ego in the first place, you would realize that this whole thing about social media is bullshit. It's just something for people to play with their egos again. It's just like social media mostly is people looking for validation. And because and the reason people need validation from society is because people are weak inside, because they're missing something inside. They cannot they cannot be happy with themselves. They cannot be happy that the way they are, you know. They need something. They need some sort of validation, and this happens to everyone. This also happens to me, you know. This also happens to me all the time. Sometimes I also need validation. I also have my traumas, you know. Like I have my traumas with girls, with women. I have problems with women. I have problems with relationships in general, at work, with partnerships. And many times I'm not thinking clearly. you know, many times I'm taking the wrong decisions because of my ego. Many times happens all the time. So you gotta be conscious about these things, because when you become conscious about these things, you actually then start knowing about yourself and knowing about your ego, because next time your ego comes to you with these things, you know that your ego is coming, and you can just go and work around it. You know, you don't take yourself too seriously, or like don't take your ego too seriously. That's a very important lesson for you to learn. Understand that your ego is there, and understand that your ego is trying to help you to survive, but it helps you to survive with those primitive ways that doesn't really help you. It tries to help you, but it's not the help that you really need, right? But don't discard your ego. Understand your ego and try to work around. And actually, when your ego comes, when this feeling of fear, anger, resentment, happiness, and all these feelings, they will come to you, try to understand them. Try to understand your feelings. Try to understand what is actually the root of your feelings, why you're feeling very happy and why you're feeling very sad. Because then when you actually try to make these understandings about yourself and understanding yourself is the key here, right? When you do that, I think that's the path for you to have a better life. I really do think that. Okay. So that's what I have to say for now. I hope this kind of helps you, and let's have a conversation if you need. If you want to talk to someone, I'm here for you. Okay. And thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that. See you next time.